I am here. How are you?
All
Good.
right,
How
doing
you
good.
doing?
Good, thank you. Um, so I'm working on marketing like everyone else, but I think for me, my most effective marketing is going to trade shows and speaking and meeting
Mhm.
people that way.
Yep.
Uh, and just from the way your companies run, you do through road shows and you do the boot camp. You've done more road shows in the past. I think you're even doing more now. So I want to get into hosting events.
Okay.
I know Lee has had success with it up in New York IT Con. But I basically wanted to pick your brain. And, I've hosted small events, but they're kind of like half-assed a little bit. We invite like 15, 20 people, which was okay, but
Hmm.
it wasn't great. So I wanted to like take you back to your first like major event that you created and hosted and
Hmm.
just ask, I put some questions up there to maybe think about like, how many people did you get there? Did you have to make the phone calls or did you hire someone? Was it local to Nashville? And did you have vendors for it? How many people showed up? How long did it take you to prepare? What was
Gotcha.
the cost? And things
Yeah.
like that. How much did you sell? And basically, what kind of challenges you have? You're a master at this now, so I'm sure you have those SOPs on it. But that first one must have been.
Oh, it's scary. When you're doing a real event where you have a hotel contract, food and beverage, and you're doing print materials or whatever you're doing, I just want you to be prepared, Dan, because putting butts in seats is still one of the single most difficult things we have to do for marketing around this company. And we're good at it. We're great at it, but I'm telling you, it's extremely difficult. Okay. So I actually didn't start doing events, my own events, until I was about 5 years, maybe it was 4 or 5 years into the company. And the reason for that was because I wanted to build a big enough list. General rule of thumb is if you have a list of customers, people you have a relationship with, you should be able to get at least 5% of that list to 15% of that list to come to an event. That's a big general rule of thumb. All right. Now, I've had small MSPs say, well, I did a client appreciation event and I got 50-60% of my customers to show up. And okay, that's great. But they never do events. It was a golf outing. They're all local. I mean, so there's always those anomalies. I'm never going to say but in general, if you can't get 5% to an event, you have a relationship problem or the content is just totally uninteresting to them. So it's either one of those two problems. If you can get 15%, you're doing great, So like we actually get about 18% of our members to an event. All right. That's a very, very good thing. All right. So you got to size up your list. Okay. Now, originally, when I first started doing events, how did I get people there? Purely through direct mail and email. I did not have a sales team. I didn't make cold calls. We just emailed people. We mailed them. I think we were even using fax back then, believe it or not. It sounds like I was a dinosaur. And that was it. And there wasn't like social media running ads, right? There was none of that. So today, what do we do to get people to events? Of course, we still do direct mail. One of the things I would recommend is the event needs its own website. Don't let it just hang off your main URL. Like we have MSP salesroadshow.com, right? So if you go to that event site, you'll see it has all the details of the event, location, the topics, the speakers, the agenda, and the registration. So one of the things I'd recommend is have your own URL website for your event, okay? Today, how we drive people, of course, we email, we do social media, organic posts, plus we do paid ads, we do retargeting. So when someone hits that website, they'll see ads on Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Display Network. We target them that way. I have telemarketers, people calling on the phone. Like I said, direct mail, telemarketing, organic posts, paid ads. We also upload lists to Facebook. And we didn't do as much with LinkedIn this year. And it really hasn't hurt us, but LinkedIn's changing some of the way they do things. But mostly it's been through Facebook to get people to the events. Was it in Nashville? I think my first event, I don't think it was.
No, I mean most of your first events were.
I tagged on other people's events.
Exactly.
So what I did, Dan, this might be something you think about. So like, for example, Harry Brailsford, SMB Nation. I would, or the ASCII events. I started doing it at the ASCII events. I would do a 3-hour evening preview seminar the night everybody was coming in. So let's say the event started on Tuesday morning. On Monday evening, excuse me, I'd have like from 6 to 9. I would do, and like 5 o'clock, I would do cocktails and like some food, like just basic, like heavy cocktail hors d'oeuvres. And then starting at 6 to 9, I would do my event or something similar to that. And what was good about that is I wrote on the already promotion of people being in that event. Okay, number one. And I always work with the event coordinator. So I didn't ever pirate it. There's some people who do this, an event, they set up an event in another hotel, which is really bad behavior, but some of them do it. That's a quick way of making enemies super, super quick. Right. But, so I always work like with Harry, like the advantage to him was he got a cocktail reception and got people in the night before, which he wanted. And I paid for the food, the beverage, the AV, the everything. So I paid for it all. I also offered, and I did this, I paid Harry to do the confirmation. So I asked Harry, I said, well, how are you confirming people coming to the event? And he says, well, I email them. I said, well, do you physically mail them anything? He says, no. I said, well, how about if I put together a physical welcome to SMB Nation mailing? You totally approve it. It'll have your logo, your name. I'll write it. I'll do everything. You approve it, fully approve it. And we will, everybody who registers, that he would give me the name and I would mail them this package that would also in there invite them to the evening seminar. Right. So it was like I helped him, he helped me, and I would promote the event as well to my list that I had. So when I originally started, I wrote on this on the fringes of other events until I got big enough. And then we had our boot camp in Nashville, and that was our first event. We probably got about 70 people, maybe 80 people to that event.
Wow.
It was pretty pedestrian. Like I look back at photos of registration desk and the room set up, it was nothing like what you see today. I mean, there was no lighting, there was no backdrop. There was like the Marriott podium was up there. It said Marriott on the front. I mean, we're talking no frills, like the hotel AV. And then when I did that though, I did sell some sponsorship. So I put together a very basic sponsorship. I sold it. Like I emailed people and said, hey, do you want it? And I was the one selling it. I would suggest to you is one, look at your list, make sure you could get, if you got 5% of your list to show up, would you be happy? And that's what I would base it on, right? Or 5% to register, because then you have a no-show rate. Okay. I would probably start doing them free events, because if you put a ticket price on there, it just makes it that much more difficult. You'll have a higher no-show rate, but it'll be easier to get people there to the event. I would say initially you might find 1 or 2 vendors, charge them a small nominal amount to cover some of the costs. The other thing, Dan, I would recommend you do is go talk to your vendors about MDF. We have an MDF report, Jeff. Maybe you could grab that from MSP Success Magazine, because we have a whole listing we publish twice a year of the vendors and the MDF funds that they give. So you might go get some MDF funds, get some sponsorship, do your event. I would have it local to you, invite your local customers and prospects. Yeah, and months to prepare. I mean, I can't remember. I mean, we prepare like a year in advance, for these events, because today we have more extensive hotel contracts. So I would say you want to be planning at least 3 months out, where you're going to have it, what's the agenda, who's the speakers, what are the sponsorship spots, getting the registration set up, confirmation set up, because once you register people, you got to have the confirmation, but then you need to call and confirm people before they come. So I would say no less than 3 months out, I would be preparing. I don't remember what it cost. The catering, yes, you want to feed them a little bit. Don't go hog wild on this. But if you don't provide people at least with coffee, they'll riot on you. So I would say, coffee and tea.
And I'll throw something in around the vendors, and this is an important one here. Vendors will look at past historical of what you've done. typically, unless you're partnering with someone. So if you're partnering with someone, which can be a good strategy of going for an event, is that they bring their list and their people to the event. Maybe you get 2 or 3 of them. I've seen of that in the past. That's how they pay their admission to be able to pay a lot of times that first one, because if you go out, same thing with us, is that if we had never run an event and we go out and ask someone for money right now, they're like, well, I don't have any historical, like, what have you done before? And I see this all the time with someone where the first time out of doing an event, if you haven't proven yourself of being able to put together an event, it's hard to get that sponsorship dollars of someone that's going to pay to like have a booth at your event, because there's just nothing for them to expect off of it. You'll get minimal dollars on that typically there, unless you have some way better to be able to prove that you've got whatever great thing you have that you're going to be able to pull those people in.
Right.
Robin hit the nail on the head with this MDF side of things. And I put it up there. It's mspsuccess.com /MDF. It's a report that we're constantly building on of the companies and how they offer MDF. Is that a lot of times partners, depending on who you're working with within the channel, is that they can help you put together events and give funding on dollars of that, on the work with you. A lot of it depends on how much you spend with them. The more you spend, the more likely that they're going to approve of what your request is there. And sometimes they're going to usually start out the same as those sponsors. They're going to start out small, because if you haven't done anything, there's a risk factor for them of what you're going to do and put into it. If you prove out that you can bring them business based on what you're doing, they'll keep on feeding you that money because it's worthwhile to them. I think Rob Ray, when he was with Dado, talked about it, of where it was something like for every dollar of MDF that they spent a couple of years back, he was telling me this, it was like $3.50 or $4.50, something like that they got back within 6 months of revenue. So that's the play of what they're looking to do with these sponsors of it. But just know, some of these numbers that Robin's throwing out too, is that it is in getting an event, you got to really think through, how am I going to get these people here? And it's the content, just like Robin was talking about. It's the content of what you have. It's the venue. It's, sometimes it's even the entertainment, or what's the draw of getting there.
Yeah, you get them a celebrity. Having a celebrity is very expensive, but if you have, you want to have something that people want to come see and hear. In the beginning, I did not have a celebrity. It was me. So like I said, it wasn't a celebrity, so it was just purely the content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on that also is that if you start out, get that 10, 15, if you haven't already done it, that 10, 15 person event, and consider that, like, if you can get that, you run yourself through in a smaller event, smaller budget with it, of what you have, lower risk. If you're looking for 15 people to show up to your event, which is fantastic, that means you can sell 15 people all at once there in what you're doing. Then if you really screw things up and you get 2 people showing up, well, you didn't waste thousands of dollars on it there in getting 15 people to show up. So my advice would be, start small on some of these things. Don't try to get this with vendors and this whole circus of everything.
Yeah, don't be too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's another thing for content. Try to do a webinar on the topic first. If you can't get people to register for a webinar, you're not going to get them in person.
Okay.
So start with the webinar topics first.
Got it.
Okay. Then that's the content. Now there's other reasons people come to events. They don't just come for the content. They come for networking with each other, for celebrities they might meet, the vendors who might be there. So, or the venue or the food or the whatever, the experience. That was the problem, like during COVID, that's why so many people couldn't make virtual events work. Because when you stripped away the cocktail reception and the meet and greets and the venue and like all those things, all you were left with was the content. And a lot of people have very, very weak content. So they just didn't do events at all. Like we flip it. We try to do both experience and the content has got to be good. So anyway, Dan, I hope that helps.
Well, very helpful. One question, if you're gonna do small, like, would you recommend like a full day event or a half a day event?
I would start out, why don't you start out with like a 2-hour event?
Okay,
That's not technically a half day, but it's, start out there and then build from there. You could have it like, you could either have a breakfast. It might be the cheapest way to go. You have a breakfast and then the content, so that way people can go back to their office. You could have a lunch and then have, serve lunch and then have the event right after. Or you could do sort of like it's an event that starts at, maybe it's like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, ends at 4:30, and then you have a cocktail reception. So people, so those are, I think that's where I would start.
yeah, that's a good idea. Now, just a fun question. When you did your first event with 70 people, how many years did it take? You obviously worked on that and built it to where it's at now. So what was sort of that? I don't want to ask too many questions, but how was that growth process? Was it like the next year you had 140 and then 300, or did it take a number of years to get that process down?
Well, I mean, every year we grow our events. 2019, 2020 was 2020 and 2021, not so much. I mean, that was like we tread water there, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we typically grow our attendance to these events by 10%. But see, you got to remember again, we're in a limited, we're kind of saturating our market too. I don't know, like like I went from 70 people at our first boot camp, and now we get 1,300. So but that's like 15, 16 years, so.
So there's also some other factors on it, Dan, of looking at it. It's not just the growth of people. Sometimes it's when you're booking these, you have to look at what the cost benefit is of how big of a venue that you're booking. It depends on where you're at and kind of what you're trying to provide for them. Even for us right now, of where we're limited, we book 3 years out for our events. And so we're maxed out basically on space from what we're doing for a lot of different things. And so in 2025, we actually have it in a different location outside of Nashville. And so there's not just how many can I get to the event. Ours is also a paid event. It's also a membership event. There, as you know, you get tickets to boot camp and roadshow with your membership. And so there's those factors that figure into it. But as it's growing, those, just like anything else, I mean, if you're growing from 2-person event to 15-person event, you can 7x the size of your event very quickly. Once you start getting to 1,200, you're not doubling the event to 2,500 the next year. Right. And so those early on, I don't remember of how many were. The second one was probably about 120, Robin.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'd have to look back. I don't know.
Somewhere in that range of it, and then started to grow. It was really more the third one for us.
Because it started exponentially growing. Yeah. We grow, but then now, we've
and then it kind of evened. It like went up and then
sort of evens off now.
Not evened out, but had that like 10%, 15% growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, good deal, Dan.
Yeah, great
information.
That, man. Thank you very much.
You got it.